morning. I'm Brent Adams here with your Rural Strong Morning Ag Report for this Wednesday, October 11th, the 284th day of 2023. Leading off the headlines this morning, U.S. agricultural exports will likely achieve the USDA forecast. More from USDA Radio's Gary Crawford.
As you listen to this story, keep in mind that in real time, the old 2023 fiscal year for ag exports already ended September 30th, but it takes over a month to collect, collate, and publish all the ag trade numbers from around the world. So we've got to wait another month for the total 2023 export number. We do know what USDA's been forecasting for the year, which is
$177.5 billion, which would be a 10% decrease from fiscal year 2022.
This from USDA economist and trade tracker Bart Kenner. So after 11 months of the fiscal trading year, where are we?
Currently, we're at $166 billion, so we've got $11.5 billion to go to make that forecast.
Now, considering that in August alone we sold $12.5 billion worth, so with a decent sales month in September, Bart says we should make that forecast of $177.5 billion, maybe more.
That would not be a surprise to be above that number.
It wouldn't. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Well, red-hot imports of foreign agricultural products are cooling down, and Kenner took us behind the numbers.
This country's agricultural trade deficit is growing, but there is a bit of encouraging news on the ag import front.
We're seeing a leveling off of agricultural import values,
which USDA economist Bart Kenner says have, of course, been growing rapidly over the last few years, but now seem to be slowing down a bit.
From 2020 to 2021, imports increased 14%. From 2021 to 2022, agricultural imports increased 19%. So far, through 11 months of this fiscal year, compared to the first 11 months of last fiscal year, 2022 to 2023, agricultural imports have only increased 1%.
Now, yes, at last count, we're still running an ag trade deficit, $14 billion, but Kenner says that's because of more declines in U.S. export sales and less to increasing imports of foreign ag products. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Veronica Nye, American Farm Bureau Federation senior economist, also put the new trade numbers into perspective.
Well, the new trade data puts us out through August of 2023. And in August, we had the largest monthly trade deficit that we've ever had in U.S. agricultural trade. We had almost $12.5 billion in exports, a little over $16 billion in imports, which means we had a trade deficit of over $3.6 billion in a single month.
Nye says the strong U.S. dollar is behind the deficit.
The strong interest rates that we've seen in the United States over the last year and a half trying to combat inflation is really leading to a strong U.S. dollar. And that strong U.S. dollar makes imports relatively less expensive, but it makes it difficult for our exports to compete globally because our products are priced in a relatively expensive dollar.
Nye adds that the strong dollar means agriculture export values are lower and an increase in some imports.
Overall, U.S. ag export value is down by about 9%. But when we break it out, what we see is that the vast majority of that decrease is in major bulk products, which are down 16% relative to the same time last year, whereas high-value products are only down by 4%. When we look at imports and where we're seeing those import numbers pop, then fresh and frozen vegetables, which are up over 15% this year compared to last year.
That's American Farm Bureau Federation senior economist Veronica Nye. Well, the corn harvest continues at a pretty good pace. Corn condition remains stable as expected. More from USDA Radio's Gary Crawford.
For those of us watching the corn crop over this past week,
we saw some pretty good progress in terms of maturation and harvest.
USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey, as we start this week, 89% of the nation's corn crop is fully mature, ready to cut, and on that score,
we did see an 11-point jump in the last week to reach 34% of the U.S. corn harvested by October 8th.
About 3% or so ahead of average, ahead of last season at this time. Also, at this point of the season, Brad says you expect no changes to corn condition ratings.
That's exactly what we got. No change from last week in the good to excellent ratings, steady at 53%.
No change in that nasty poor to very poor category, 18% of the corn in that pile, same as last week. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
And soybean growers are also speeding up harvest. Here again is Gary Crawford.
Many of the nation's soybean producers have shifted harvesting activities into high gear during this past week.
We saw a really nice jump from 23% harvested a week ago to 43% on October 8th.
USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says that's ahead of the average pace, a little ahead of a year ago, as 93% of the crop has dropped leaves and is ready for harvest, and growers are harvesting at a pretty fast pace.
That is not unusual for this time of year when we get an open window like we saw in the first few days of October with that hot, dry weather. Producers are often going for the more fragile soybeans.
And indeed, during this past week, condition ratings for the soybean crop did decline slightly, subtracting 1% of the crop from the good to excellent category, adding 1% to the poor to very poor pile, leaving 51% of beans rated good to excellent, 18% poor to very poor. Gary Crawford reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
And finally, this morning, Midwest agriculture is facing new challenges as a possibly lengthy war in the Middle East dominates headlines, and closer to home, low river levels have an impact on barge traffic. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley says Midwest farmers are already seeing the impact of the war between Israel and Hamas.
We've just seen the price of oil shoot up nationwide, so that's going to raise the price of diesel.
And Grassley says have further ag impacts if the war spreads, including between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Closer to home, chronic drought is also having impacts.
This drought has also caused transportation challenges on the Missouri and Mississippi rivers because of low water levels, so we can't fill up the barges as much as we would normally do.
Grassley says the inland waterway system gives the U.S. a competitive trade advantage, but low river levels point to the need for improvements.
I supported the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that added over $800 million for Mississippi lock and dam improvements. I'm reaching out to the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee to remind them of the importance of investing in our lock and dam infrastructure.
Grassley says the rivers are vital for Midwest growers, and with harvest underway, he wants to make sure the lock and dam investments are top of mind for his Senate colleagues. Well, you can keep up with the latest in the world of agriculture by subscribing to the Tractors and Troubadours podcast from Rural Strong Media. Each week, I bring you agriculture industry newsmakers, hot button industry issues, educational features, and the best in traditional country music. The Tractors and Troubadours podcast can be found at ruralstrongmedia.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We also invite you to join us daily on Rural Strong Radio, our 24/7 streaming radio station found at ruralstrongmedia.com or on the Live 365 streaming radio app for your mobile device. Each day, we bring you our award-winning agriculture programming, as well as the best in traditional country music, mixed in with a little bluegrass, western swing, southern rock, and inspirational music. Again, the place to find Rural Strong Radio is ruralstrongmedia.com or the Live 365 streaming radio app. We're portable, so take us with you everywhere you go this harvest season. We'll get you through those long, challenging days this fall. Well, I'll be back again tomorrow with another Rural Strong Morning Ag Report here on Steve Shetler Media. Make it a great day, everybody.